Today we have another Friday Farm Report with Jordan Grossman as we continue to go through our top 20 prospects in the Mets system. Today we have landed at the final five here, the top five prospects in the Mets system. You know them well: Francisco Alvarez, Brett Baty, Mark Vientos, Ronny Mauricio, and Matt Allan. But we have a lot to discuss as these prospects head into a pivotal season with a lot of uncertainty now due to MLB's lockout. Get through all of that on today's edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so we today have our last bit of top 20 coverage to give you for our Friday Farm Report. I'm once again joined by Jordan Grossman, who does social media for us at Locked On Mets on Twitter. And for the past 3 weeks now, we've been doing 5 at a time, going through our top 20 lists. Today, we are finally at the top 5. So I just want to start off by listing the players because I think everyone, if you've been following along, should know where we're at. But for those of you who maybe haven't been paying attention, what we're left with is we got Francisco Alvarez, Brett Baty, Mark Vientos, Ronnie Mauricio, and Matt Allan. Our lists are almost the same. We have one difference. You have Mark Vientos at 5, which I think is probably what most people have at this stage. I have Vientos at 3, and I have Mauricio at 5. You have Mauricio at 3. So that's the one difference. We both had Matt Allan at 4, and we both had Alvarez and Baty at 1 and 2, which I think is the absolute consensus after the season that Baty just had, that those are the top 2 prospects. I want to start off talking about Mark Vientos because right now, we were just talking before we hit record here, he kind of gets screwed over more than most, as does Ronnie Mauricio here, because they both got added to the 40-man roster. We are in a lockout. The minor league season is going to start without a hitch. And if this lockout extends, these guys are left unable to play minor league baseball because they're on the 40-man roster. So,
yeah.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, so
Sorry,
what do you
no.
What do you think about how that's going to affect the season that these two guys are going to have here?
It's disappointing, just like it's disappointing to see so many major league players are going to be left out of the major league season for the first whatever it is, 2 3 weeks. If it's a month, I don't know. People are going to want to go to minor league games if it's local in their area. Even some people probably travel 2 3 hours just to get a taste of some baseball. If it's not going to be there in April, so to not have Mark Vientos, who was probably outside of Alvarez and Baty had the most impressive offensive year in the system, not being able to go to Syracuse and watch him is disappointing. Not being able to see Ronnie Mauricio, who showed some legit flashes in Brooklyn and made his way up to Binghamton and hit well for the week he was up there. Not being able to go to Binghamton and see him is going to be very disappointing. So yeah, just all around a big disappointment, and I'm hopeful MLB can get something done with the Player Association in the next 2 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously what we're all counting on seeing at this stage. You look at someone like Mauricio as a prospect, and this is such a critical year for him. It's really unfortunate he's on the 40 because you want him to have that full season. I mean, it's a really strange casualty that you have a prospect that, what is he, 21 years old now?
He's about to turn 21 in a few weeks. Yeah.
Okay, so about to turn 21, entering a pivotal year. I mean, I don't want to call it a make or break year for Ronnie Mauricio, but this is really, I mean, we've talked about him a lot in the past. There is, I think, a differing opinion between a lot of people on, how we value a Ronnie Mauricio. Someone like me, I've been a little bit down on him because I look at someone who swings at everything. The plate discipline isn't great, made a lot of errors, some of these things. And I'm just not quite sure if the game will ever, meet the tools. And what you need is a bunch of playing time at these upper levels. And so now Ronnie Mauricio misses, hopefully not too much, but let's just say, worst case scenario happens and we only get a 60 game MLB season. I mean, he could lose half of a season of development here. and that's what's on the line as we sit here in this lockout.
Yeah, and the development's extremely important for him because right now it's all still just potential. I mean, in his 281 career games in the Met system, he's only had a 705 OPS, which isn't great. It's not terrible either, but it's disappointing for a guy who's had as much hype behind him as he had since he got signed by the organization back in 2016, I believe. But yeah, so like you said, the player development is going to be critical for him, and for the Mets not even to have him and Vientos as well at minor league camp, just get an eye on him to see how he worked over the winter, to see where he's at physically, mentally. It's disappointing that he can't be around the team.
Yeah, and someone like Brett Beatty, who's further along in his development just by virtue of being drafted at a later time, not being in the organization too long, where he was Rule 5 eligible. Luckily for him, he gets to go on and have a normal minor league season. It's just interesting that Mauricio, just based on his standing and the rules that are in place, kind of gets the short end of the stick here. Since we're on him. I do want to ask you, what is it that still leaves you really confident in Ronnie Mauricio to have measured number 3 prospect? Because, like I said, there are a lot of people who are down on him, but it seems like you have really continued to go to bat for Mauricio as a prospect that still has so much upside and can be, one of the best players on the Mets one day if everything breaks right.
So I'll say this before I go ahead with everything else. I don't think he's really a shortstop anymore.
Hmm.
I think the Mets are eventually they're gonna move off him starting this year. I heard that he's bringing an outfield glove to Mets camp this year. Eventually, when he's able to go there, when once there's a new CBA in place. So the Mets are gonna at least give him some reps in the outfield this year. Hopefully, maybe they'll get him some reps at third base, second base, but defense, the shortstop defense in Dominican Winter League this year was pretty bad. I mean, I'm pretty sure he got benched because of that. That was the main reason why they sat him during that time. So it's he's not really a shortstop anymore. But if he can be a solid outfielder, a third baseman, like third base is probably where most people have pegged him for the last 2 years, just based off when he came into camp. People saw how big he was. Just they knew he was going to grow out of shortstop, and it's we're getting to that point. But I think it's all about the offensive potential. He's still at his best. I think he can be Javi Baez esque, which is a really impressive player. He can hit for a ton of power. He's never going to be a huge OBP guy. He's probably going to be like in the high 320s, low 330s at best. He's not really going to get on base a ton. But if he can hit 290, 300 in major leagues with a lot of power, the potential is there for him to be a 3-4 win player for multiple years and have all-star appearances. So I think the potential. I wanted to put Vientos ahead of him badly, but the problem, like I said, is just like I said before, Vientos is a DH, first base type, and Mauricio is probably a third baseman outfielder, which just holds a lot more value when you're talking about prospects.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. I guess the way I look at Mark Vientos, maybe I just don't knock the defense as much as I should when it comes to a prospect ranking because I look at the Mets top prospects and I continue to see Mark Vientos, and I think this is the guy that has the chance this year to provide great value to this current Mets roster. And because of that, because of my uncertainties with not only Mauricio but also with Matt Allan and just the injury concern, that's why I gave Vientos that nudge above. And again, with Mauricio, it's just some of those concerns that had me put him at fifth. But overall, there's no doubting that the upside with Ronnie Mauricio has him as one of the top prospects in the Mets system. Football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fire coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. As we switch gears a bit and look towards Vientos and what he could bring to the Mets. When we talk about this layoff period, he's going to be getting his work in. Does this bode well for him to make an earlier a debut, or do you think this hurts him? And the reason why I think it potentially could bode well is, this might be a situation the deeper that we get here where maybe this ramp up into the season is so short that the Mets might stay a little more internal when it comes to the additions that they make. And if they do, maybe that frees up a little bit more at bats for a player like Vientos who, could maybe get fast tracked a bit depending on how this all shakes out.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely possible. Like we're going to see, let's say hypothetically, a CBA comes together March 12th, March 13th. I mean, you're going to have what 3-4 weeks to get together a few players to sign. I mean, it's possible they bring in a Schwarber and Nelson Cruz. They could just do that, but I think like you said, it makes sense to get someone like Mauricio at bats. He's excuse me, Vientos. Um, Getting ahead of myself. He's
Next year,
uh,
maybe 2
yeah,
years.
yeah. Um, but yeah, Vientos' bat is ready. I mean, he showed last year with the kind of power that he was bringing to the plate. It was just ridiculous, and it wasn't just he wasn't pulling the ball. He was going to all fields with his power. It was just super impressive. Had that bit of a slow start, but then just completely destroyed Binghamton in those last 2.5 3 months there. So yeah, I think they could have promoted him straight from Double A. Honestly, I think there was a case to be made where he could have been a September call up last year, and I think if he has a really strong spring this coming year, he's going to make a case to make the opening day roster. It's very possible.
I look, I've been campaigning for it all off season. I don't see why you give a Kyle Schwarber $20 million on a 2 or 3 year deal when you have Vientos in place to potentially be that DH. I know you are a Schwarber fan though, so I guess if you're trying to win now, the argument is there is still a learning curve that has to take place at the big league level, and a Schwarber will come in and change the lineup right away. So I guess let me ask you that how much do you think the Mets should prioritize trying to add one more bat when we do get to the other end of this lockout here?
So you know me. You know how high I've always been on Vientos since 2019, 2020. I've been telling people about this guy even before like when he first got drafted. I told people to watch out for his bat. And that is he's finally getting the hype. I'm really excited for him. But I always, especially when you have an owner like Steve Cohen who's just so rich in resources, um, I always prefer, especially when you're a team looking to go into championship mode, you go for the proven guy over the prospect who you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you're hopeful that Vientos can be, Pete Alonso-esque with the power that he brings to the table. But the thing is, you just don't know, because the jump from Double A to Triple A is so big, and then the jump from Triple A to the major leagues is enormous. I don't think some people understand how big that jump is. You're going from facing guys who are on the verge of going to maybe independent ball, and then you're going to facing guys like Max Scherzer, Jacob Degrom, level pitchers. It's a whole another level. I'm not saying every guy is like that, but there's so many starters that are just blowing guys away every single night that he can struggle coming out of the gate. It can be 3-4 weeks and he's hitting 170. You're like, why did we not sign a proven guy like a Schwarber or like a Nelson Cruz? So I just think when you're going into that championship mode, it just makes sense to go for the proven guy. And I hope Vientos proves me wrong. If they decide not to sign someone, and he comes up and he destroys the ball, I'm going to be extremely excited, and it'll be great. But I think the move is to go for a proven bat first.
Yeah, at this point, throughout the lockout, they've said that like, there's no communication between the teams and the players. I find it hard to believe that there's not at least a little bit of intel that leaks through. And the reason I bring that up is, if we see the Mets sort of sit on their hands and stick with the guys that they have, I think that's a pretty big reflection of what they think of Mark Vientos when we get to that time. If there is no other big moves made, I gotta think it's because they believe he's going to play a pretty big role, especially when you consider some of the doubts that I would imagine they have with Dominic Smith after this past year, with Robinson Cano at his age, coming off of a year-long suspension, and also even JD Davis, and potentially moving him as well. So I think that will certainly be factored in when the Mets are making some of these other moves when we get to the other side of the lockout. Now, I want to talk about Matt Allan because we have yet to discuss the latest injury news, which was that he had a surgery to move the ulnar nerve, if I'm not mistaken. Essentially, from what I understand, that is sometimes part of the Tommy John surgery anyway, where they'll move that nerve as just part of the initial procedure. For whatever reason, with Matt Allan, they did not, and I guess there was some lingering pain, so he ends up getting that follow-up procedure done. Now we don't know exactly when his season is going to start. Um, does this make it even less likely that we see, a ton of Matt Allan this year? Is this year just about getting back on the mound, and next year is where we can finally get a real sense of what he is as a prospect?
Yeah, I don't think rushing him to get him back into games should be the Mets' top priority at all. Matt Allan even said it himself. He says, I know I'm not a part of the present, but I'm a big part of the future for the Mets. So he's got to prioritize his health here. No one's in a rush to see him pitch against guys in high A. If he has to sit out another year, it's disappointing, obviously. But if it's for the best of his long term outlook with the organization, then it's what you have to do. Just continue working to build back his velocity, working in Port St. Lucie with the strength and coordinating staff, with the player development staff, just to make sure he's where he needs to be. That the fastball is usually what 95, 96 when he's healthy. You don't want him going back into games until it's at that level. The changeup mid 80s. Maybe he even wants to develop a fourth pitch while he's working on his rehab, and maybe develop a slider a little bit, split finger, who knows. But yeah, I don't, I've read reports from Tim Healy saying that he's likely to pitch this year. I'm guessing they're thinking, late July, August, maybe. Not going to be right away because, like you said, the owner surgery. But yeah, prioritizing his health has to be number one for the Mets. Don't worry about getting him 7, 8 starts and in 30 innings for high A Brooklyn just to sell tickets or something like that, because that's a
Yeah.
Will Pun mentality.
Yeah, yeah, it is for sure. Yeah, worrying about the who's going to be a draw in the minor leagues. I don't think that is a top priority for this regime that did not sign Tim Tebow. That was the past group. When it comes to where Matt Allen will be at, following this season, how old is he now? Is he just turned 21? Let's see.
He's
Born
turning
April
21 and April.
April.
Yeah.
So that means that next year will be his age 22 season. I feel like we could see just rapid progression through the minor leagues next season for Matt Allan, where I don't know where exactly he would start. I guess if we do get a little bit of high A this year, maybe you could see the Mets be really aggressive with him. His stuff is certainly good enough that I don't think he would necessarily struggle being put into double A and being thrown into the fire. But the bottom line is, after this season, next year we should begin to see Matt Allan get to those upper levels of the minor leagues. And if he's dominant, I mean, how quickly can an arm like this that is pretty refined already when the Mets drafted him, how quickly can a pitcher like that, climb through the farm system once he gets healthy?
I mean, he's already got 3+ pitches with the fastball, the changeup, and the curveball. And the changeup, the reason I'm so high on him is because, when you listen to people last year who were talking about him in Brooklyn when he was with the team down there, they were talking about how much his changeup had grown, and how he was getting really confident with it. So just having that third plus pitch next to his fastball and his curveball is a really strong development for him. Obviously, like I said, it's just, so much is going to have to count on how he looks post TJ and post the ulnar surgery. But he's someone who can move through the system very quickly once he's healthy. Like you said, he gets some starts in Brooklyn to end this year, and then maybe he starts 2023 in Binghamton, and who knows at that point he could see maybe if he really just destroys Binghamton in his age 22, 23 season, he can make his way up there by August, September of 2023. So that would be, probably the high end of my projection, but I'm not really sure. I think 2024 is probably more realistic. Start of 2024.
Yeah, and he's going to be, like he said himself, a big part of the Mets' future. So that's the one pitching prospect we've been talking about that everyone should be most excited for, especially just considering maybe some of the lack of other options the Mets have, it kind of elevates his status as the Mets' top pitching prospect. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar with amazing flavors like mint brownie, coconut almond, or my personal favorite, cookies and cream. They come low in calories, they're high in protein, they're low in sugar, low in fat. They can replace your candy bar, and it is so much better for you to have a Built Bar when you're hungry, when you're trying to, refuel after a workout, or you're just trying to get your day started right. You should always turn to Built Bars, especially also if you want to try their new puffs, which are a fan favorite now with some incredible flavors like the yummy cinnamony churro. These are the first ever protein infused marshmallows. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, and like the Built Bars themselves, they come covered in 100% real chocolate. If you want to try Built Bars or their puffs today, go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15. You're going to get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. As we close out here with Francisco Alvarez and Brett Beatty, there was some quotes from Alvarez that we did not discuss just yet, I don't believe, where he said his goal was to make it to the big leagues this year, which is very bold. I like the confidence. I don't expect that to happen. But what would have to take place for Francisco Alvarez to be at Citi Field in a major league game this summer?
He's gonna have to be Barry Bonds in Binghamton. That's what's
Yeah.
gonna have to happen. That's literally the only scenario where the Mets are gonna say, James McCann, you're our backup now. We're promoting Francisco Alvarez. He's gonna literally, people saw what he did in St. Lucie to start last year. Let me pull up the numbers here. In 15 games on there, he hit 417 with a 567 on base and a 646 slugging, which is 1213 OPS. If he puts up numbers like that over a 30, 40 game span in Binghamton, then you can seriously consider bringing him up. But outside of that, it's not going to
It's not
happen.
happening. It's not happening.
It's it's
I
really
had to
ambitious,
ask,
and
but yeah.
I love the confidence from a kid like that. 20 years old. He knows how good he is, and he knows how what his goals are. To get to the majors would be super super impressive, but I don't see it happening.
What that tells me is that that's a kid that anytime he steps in the box, he's the type of natural hitter that just feels like he's gonna get a hit, that he's gonna drive the baseball. And honestly, we've talked about this before. The bat is so advanced that it's not completely crazy for the bat alone to have this rapid rise and to even be seen this year. It's the fact that he's a catcher.
Mhm.
That's the part of it is there's so much that comes into developing himself, in that part of his game. And I don't think the Mets want to rush that, especially because there is potential for him to be an above average defensive catcher as well. What do you see in regards to his defense, where this could really be the full package for the Mets for a very long time once he eventually makes it up to the show?
So the defense, I'm not crazy about. I saw him a couple of times last year in Brooklyn. Framing is decent. The blocking is all right. Everything is just it's okay. It's nothing flashy. But when you have a guy like you said, the offensive potential that's there, you don't need him to be special behind the plate. You just need him to be a 131, if you can 140 OPS plus kind of guy. That's all you need out of the catching position. Because if you look at catching across baseball, that's really hard to come by. There's only two or three guys every year that post those kind of numbers, like Will Smith, JT Realmuto. It's there's not many names like that. And if the Mets can get that kind of production out of their catching position, they don't need him to be special. But I want to just mention that, like, even his outs, when you see him play in person, they're so loud. He hits the ball extremely hard almost every single time he's at the plate. Like, it's ridiculous how good this guy is with the bat. I think people, that should be their number one priority this year. Is if there's no Major League Baseball in April. I know it's cold in Binghamton, but I would suggest you go out there just to watch him play because he's that impressive.
Yeah, I know that I'll be making some trips up north to see him. I already told this story. I had tried to catch him in Port St. Lucie last year, and as you mentioned, those Ruthian or Bonzian numbers, he was out of there too quick for me to get down there. Should have been after the first week. So he's obviously a must watch TV for anyone. And I think what's exciting is just how young he is. It's ridiculous to have a prospect that can still have a couple more years in the minor leagues, and when he gets to the Mets, he's still going to have pretty much all of his 20s in front of him. It's the prospect that everyone can't wait to see. He is by far the top prospect in this system. But with that said, Brett Beatty, maybe had. Would it be a stretch to say? I guess because Vientos, maybe really, put a lot of people on notice. But I would almost say that Brett Beatty had the best rise through the Met system this past year, in that I think his floor, everyone now sees, is so high that this guy just seems like he's going to be an above average starter one day, and that can stay at third base as well. What did you like the most about Brett Beatty over this past year, and what do you think we're going to see from him in 2022?
Yeah, so the big thing that you mentioned there is that he's going to stay at third base long term, and that's why so many people have him ahead of Mark Vientos, even though Vientos arguably had the better offensive season in Binghamton. It's just Beatty, shed some weight. The agility got better, the footwork got better, the arm has always been good. So he went from being a guy that a lot of people projected to be first base DH, like a Vientos. Now he's entrenched at third base. So that just it has so much more value. Like I talked about with Mauricio over Vientos. It's just having those guys who aren't first base DH types. It holds a ton of value when you can play a position like shortstop, third base, or any of the outfield spots. So that's a really big thing. The plate discipline was really impressive from Beatty this year. He didn't hit for a ton of home runs, but the power gap to gap, his exit velocity numbers like Alvarez are really, really strong. They're not Alvarez-esque, but they're really, really good when he hits a lot of ground balls. So that's a little bit of an issue. That's probably my main concern with him, is hitting too many ground balls. He's got to get it a little bit more elevated. But when he's hitting it as hard as he is, I don't think it's really going to be a huge issue for him long term. I mean, I'm not going to compare him to Juan Soto. We see, Juan Soto hits a ton of ground balls. He just gets it through everyone because he's that good at baseball. So you hope he can just, get the ball a little bit more elevated. But outside of that, just super, super impressive year for Brett Beatty. And I'm excited to see what he does in Binghamton to start 2022.
Yeah, it's a huge year for him. Starting in Double A, that is obviously when you begin to go into a season and set those Alvarez-like goals, right? I'm sure Brett Beatty is thinking along the same lines. I can make it to the show this year if I do my part and I continue to produce. I think that's probably still a little far-fetched for Brett Beatty, because this Mets team is going to be very, veteran, heavy, and it's going to be trying to win. I don't know if it's necessarily the year for him. That's probably next year. But I think this is the season for Brett Beatty when it comes to being that prospect that's going to be showcased at the upper levels, that fans are going to go out to see as well. And you know what? If we don't get a season right away, he might be the biggest attraction to go check out right now. I guess him and Alvarez
Oh yeah.
are what Mets fans can maybe take solace in, to head out to some minor league games and watch the Stars of tomorrow.
If you're within driving distance of Binghamton, I would go. I'm 3.5 hours away from there. I'm probably going to try to hit up a couple of games in maybe late April, early May, just when it heats up a little bit in Binghamton, maybe because I've been out there during the winter. It's freezing. During those March, April months, it's just really, really cold out there. But yeah, I'm really excited for both of them. And something I wanted to mention with Alvarez, I forgot to mention it before. Zips has it, Zips' projection system has him as a 20-year-old getting 100 OPS plus at the major league level. They have that projected for a 20-year-old catcher. I mean,
Wow.
how many guys can you say that about? It blew my mind when I saw that. I know it's not going to happen. Like, we talked about before, he's not getting to the major leagues this year, but just the fact that he has 100 OPS plus projection as a 20-year-old catcher, I'll say that again. It blows my mind.
Well, now I'm looking quickly here to see what Zips has for James McCann.
Oh boy. Oh,
So I don't see OPS plus, but their WRC plus, which is obviously a similar metric, they have him projected at 84. So Zips might like Alvarez as a hitter already more than James McCann, who'll be making 10.2 million next year from the Mets. Gotta love that they signed McCann to a 4-year deal, right?
Here, listen. I actually see here McCann. They have projected for 0.8 WAR, and they have Alvarez projected for 1.2. So they have Alvarez being a better player this year.
It's
Which,
crazy.
like I said before, Zips isn't 100% accurate. But the fact that he's 20 and McCann's, what is he, a 6, 7, 8 year veteran,
Yeah.
and this kid already has better projections than him. It's incredible.
It really is. It's again what people have to look forward to when you think about the future of the New York Mets. You're thinking about a future with Francisco Alvarez squarely at the center of it, and that's why he is our clear-cut top prospect in our top 20 list. It's been a lot of fun going through it with you over this past month here, and we'll be doing some more prospect content because that might be all we have as we
Just
get
minor league baseball. That's it.
minor league baseball, and I guess we can start looking to the draft and college baseball if we really get desperate
Oh
here.
yeah, people can shoot me DMs. Recruit me to your favorite college baseball team because I'm looking for one to
There
start
you go.
following. LSU, Florida, Texas, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. I'm looking at all those teams. So send me some messages. Let me know.
Yeah, look, I think college baseball is going to get as big of a boost as it's ever gotten this year when it comes to viewership. People are starving for baseball content, and it seems like from what I can just gather, watching some highlights on social media, it seems like a lot of fun to look at some of these players that will one day be starring in the minor leagues and potentially in the major leagues. But that was this week's Farm Report. As always, thank you to Jordan Grossman for joining me. You can follow him on Twitter at MetsFan since '02. You can find some of the work he does on social media for us at Locked On Mets, and you can find his Facebook page. We are Mets Believers. We will be back next week with some form of a farm report as this lockout continues.